Welcome back to Turning Hard Times into Good Times. I'm your host, Jay Taylor, and I'm really pleased to have with me for a second time Franklin Sanders. Franklin brings to us a very rare combination of understanding. On the one hand, he is a free market capitalist who understands the laws of nature within the four dimensions of time and space. And in fact, he can help you, if you are in the markets, to buy free market money, namely gold and silver. He does sell those products. He also provides a really good commentary, I think almost on a daily basis, that I read that he sends out, and that's free of charge. So I would suggest you take advantage of that. So he has that one dimension, that idea that the understanding of capitalism and free markets and how they work. But on the other hand, Franklin also understands that there exists outside of time and space a creator of the universe who actually rules over all that goes on in our world, even if sometimes it doesn't seem like it. With regard to that part of his life, Franklin is an ordained presbyter in the Reformed Episcopal Church, and he pastors Christ Our Hope Church in Westport, Tennessee. Well, I personally believe that the real reason for America's economic problems is spiritual in nature, and I think I'm correct in suggesting that Franklin shares that view. I also believe that Franklin shares my view that because of a spiritual demise, our nation and the world as a whole is facing some extremely difficult times in the years to come. And so, as much as preparing ourselves for material goods and survival within these four dimensions of time and space, we also need to prepare ourselves spiritually. Now, if you need any evidence that America is in trouble spiritually, I think all you need to do is to look at the experience that Franklin Sanders himself has provided for us. He described that in our July 14th discussion with him, that our nation, in fact, is not a government of laws, but a government of men. It's a nation of men, I should say. So what, in my mind, sets Franklin apart from most of us, even those of us hard money, free market advocates who are Christians, is his courage to stand up for what is right, even when he knows that it could possibly cost him a great deal, he and his family. And indeed, he did that, as we discussed on this show back on July 14th. I would suggest to learn more about Franklin and to partake in his insights into these markets, go to that's the-moneychanger.com, the-moneychanger.com. There you can sign up for his free market letter and also buy gold and silver products. He has a host of products that he sells, and he's been in business for 30 years. He is as honest as anybody I've ever met in this business, and so I think you might want to, if you're interested, and I think you all should be, in owning some gold and silver, physical gold and silver, then I think one of the best places to start would be the-moneychanger.com. So anyway, Franklin, I want to thank you so much for joining me again today. It's a pleasure having you with me.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here.
It's really good. I should mention on your website, if people go there, there's some questions and answers that I think are very interesting. You know, the 10 commandments for buying gold and silver, how do I buy and sell, who is the money changer, and there is your story under that segment, who is the money changer, and that is where people can actually read the story that you told in part, in brevity, when you were with us on the 14th of July. Then there's articles of interest, why silver will outperform gold, 400%, Franklin says, and the paranoia industry, why you don't need to be afraid. Franklin also provides some soothing comfort there, I think. And is it time to talk or to fish? Well, these are some interesting topics. So again, themoneychanger.com. Well, Franklin, before we get started, am I correct in suggesting that you share my view that the root cause of America's financial problems are spiritual in nature?
Well, of course. You know, the scriptures make plain, and this is something people don't generally understand, that man is a creature of both body and spirit. You don't get one or the other. You get both, and they're not. You can't separate them. You can't, dry a human being and say, okay, we've got dried spirit over here and dried body over here. They work together in tandem. Mm-hmm.
Different than the animals, then. I mean, we love our dogs and cats. Some of us do. We have pets. We have animals that are sort of soul creatures in a way. I suppose some people have described them. They seem to express some love and affection, but not quite the same as the human being, I guess.
No, well, don't get me off in the vexed question of whether there will be dogs in heaven or not. I confess, I think there will be, because Psalm 36 says, "Thou, Lord, wilt save both man and beast." So you know, we learned something from animals, something that's essential. But yeah, the problems are spiritual, and one of the great problems is a problem of morality, and that is that people want a free ride. They want a free lunch.
Yeah.
And we've actually come to an age in America where people believe that they can have a free lunch at somebody else's expense.
Right.
Believe that they can all, you know, somehow or the other come to riches without really working very hard, and, you know, maybe by picking somebody else's pocket, but that's okay because everybody else does it.
Yeah, I was just looking at a quote from Winston Churchill. He says, "Socialism is a philosophy of failure, the greed of ignorance, and the gospel of envy. Its inherent virtue is the equal sharing of misery." And I think that sort of hits on what you were talking about. But we have been taught, have we not, Franklin, by our educational system that we can have something for nothing. And the whole Keynesian philosophy adheres to that, or is used to sell that bill of goods to us, no?
Right, that's right. And that has eroded the character of America. That's, you know, there are a lot of good people left out there. I don't want to give the idea that that's not so.
Sure.
But there are a lot of them who've given up and decided that they don't have to be productive people.
Right.
And that's just not so.
Right. And of course, if you have a dysfunctional economic system, which has been made dysfunctional mechanically by Keynesian economics, which does not allow, let's say, the pricing of capital to be discovered by manipulation of interest rates and foreign exchange rates and so forth. And then you have job opportunities which are not so abundant as they once were. It sort of encourages people, I suppose, along those lines. And then you have government programs that say, well, that's okay. If you can't find a job, just go ahead. I mean, I was just seeing at lunchtime an announcement on Bloomberg television here telling people that, you know, if you don't have enough money and you can't afford health insurance, well, just call this number and we'll make sure you have the money you need to receive health insurance. Now, Franklin, you know, as a Christian, I'm sure that you are very much in favor of helping those around you that cannot help themselves, right? I mean, this is not, I think a lot of times free market types are characterized as hard-hearted people that don't care about other people. I think you would share my view that free market economics is a mechanical system that best allows the efficient allocation of resources to provide the most goods for people. I think you would agree with me.
Let me tell you a little incident. I worked my way through college working in hospitals in Memphis, Tennessee. And used to, the churches owned the hospitals.
They used to, yeah. Now they don't.
The Methodist, the Baptist, the St. Joseph, and so forth. And when I worked at the Methodist, and this would be in 1966, say 65 and 66, they had a whole wing on the hospital where indigent people who could not pay, got complete service. They had wards where there would be like 40 beds. They had semi-private rooms where there would be 2 to 4 beds, and they even had private rooms. And those people got the exact same treatment. Well, now all of those hospitals have been sold to corporations, and that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
So
well, that's exactly right, and certainly, I mean, Ron Paul, who's been on this show, has advocated that all along. That if government hadn't stepped in, then you know, people, the churches, and so forth would and have in the past stepped in and done what they could, and that makes sense in a way because you know you're helping people in your own community for the most part. There, in that case, aren't you, Franklin?
Oh, sure, exactly.
So there are people you know, and people you can
coming from.
And people you probably can see on the streets or people that you know in your community are having a difficult time in life. And I mean, that to me is what Christianity is all about, or what it's meant to be about, is about loving and caring for those around you, the unfortunate ones. And I mean, but on the other hand, what the left side of the political spectrum wants to do is force me and you to do that. And then to share our money with people that we have no idea who they are. So, and let government get in the middle of it. But anyway, I digress, and I don't want to get off on. We could talk about that sort of thing all day long, I suppose. But just before we get into the markets, which have been tumultuous and very exciting and unnerving in many ways, but before we get there, for those that might not have listened to our discussion back on July 14th, and the notion that our governments really are not obeying their own rules. Just tell us briefly, there is a law that you said every single state in the United States, they're disobeying their own law with respect to currency. Could you just tell our listeners briefly about that?
Well, sure. There's a provision in the United States Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, that says no state shall make anything but silver and gold a tender in payment of debt. And that was put there because of the experience with state-run paper currencies before and during the American Revolution. Uh-huh. So states are prohibited from allowing anything to be a legal tender except gold and silver coin, and yet every single one of them violates that law. They accept that green paper money, which is not money. It's as the law defines money. It's not money. It is a note, and a note is a promise. With what? Is a promise to pay money. So that's universally ignored, and if you begin to think about it, you ask this question: how did this private corporation get the power through government to force the rest of us to accept their notes as if they were money?
Right, when the Constitution defies that and says that's not the case. Yeah, I mean, that's obviously a lot of Americans were asleep on that Christmas Day when the folks met at when they managed to get the Federal Reserve Law passed in 1912 or 1913. I guess it was 1912. But in any event, that's history. That's the way it is. And of course, the government has the guns. And as you found out, they brought those guns out and forced you to disobey the laws of the state of. In that case, I guess it was at that time Mississippi.
No, Tennessee, but it was also federal government, too.
Tennessee, right. Tennessee, and then, okay. Well, anyway, folks can read about this. Who is the money changer? Again, going to the moneychanger.com, the -moneychanger.com. Go there, and Franklin's story is there about how he stood up to government and ultimately was absolved and went to court and all that. But anyway, it's a very interesting story, but a very important story, and one in which I certainly have gained a great deal of respect for Franklin. Thank you very much for that, for doing that, and for standing up for what is right. The courage, I think, is something that we all need to be challenged to stand up for what is right, even if sometimes it may not be in our best short-term interest. But anyway, let's get to the markets a little bit. Franklin, you started out your missive that you send out, and by the way, let me ask you, do you send out something every day, almost every work day?
Almost every day, yeah.
Yeah, almost every day. So on Monday the 24th, yesterday, at the top of the page it says, "This is not a dip, it's a disaster and beyond repair." Now that was written after more than a 600-point down day. When we had two tumultuous massacres in the equity market, and on top of a Thursday, which was down, 200-300 points or whatever. But now, the Dow tried to rally today. It actually was up almost 400 points. It looks like it's backing off. In fact, I just read a little missive from Robert McHugh, Dr. McHugh, who I think you also know and maybe read some of his material. He says, frankly, this rally today is very unimpressive given the magnitude of the recent sell-off. And now I'm seeing that the Dow is actually down 97 points on the day. S&P is down 13. NASDAQ is still up a little bit, but not by much. What are your thoughts, Franklin, about these equity markets last week and so far this week?
Well, technically it's a disaster, and technically it can't be repaired, and I'm appalled to listen to people who make their living selling stocks, telling folks not to panic. And that's not less than criminal to me, because you can look at the stock market, and I don't know how many, at a chart of any of the stock indices, and I don't know how many technical indicators you have that this is a break waiting to happen, and now it's happened. And the latest thing is a big rounding top or dome, and it's fallen out of that dome. There's a rising wedge that was built for years and years and years. There's a broadening top in place since 1995, and I could just go on and on. When you get a 1,000-point break, that's not a glitch. And when you get 500-point down days 2 days in a row, that's not a glitch. What these people are not telling anyone is that crashes go in 6 to 8 week cycles.
Yeah.
You follow what I'm saying? That
Sure.
Not going to be over for 6 to 8 weeks, and a 20% drop would take the Dow down to about 14,500, and you'll get at least a 20% drop from the high. And this is my opinion. This is going to go on for at least 7 more years. You broke the back of the market, and you'll see. I think you'll certainly see the Fed panic and come out with QE4.
Yeah.
And my only question is, which path will this panic take the path of 2008, where stocks fell and gold and silver fell, but the dollar rose, or this time will the dollar fall along with stocks and gold and silver rise? And so far, the dollar is falling. That's one of the scariest things, Jay, that I see happening, is apparently there's a complete lack of faith in the dollar.
Well, we did see the Treasury market come back a little bit yesterday, but not an awful lot compared to the amount of carnage in the equity markets, I would say. So I hear...
The dollar was down 245 points yesterday at one point.
That's incredible. It did rally, though, and I think it was up stronger today. I haven't seen it in recent, the last hour or so. But, you talk about... Go ahead.
I think it's up about 85 points.
Okay, so it's not made up anywhere near what it's lost. So now, you talk about QE4. I'm reading here that Bridgewater, a highly acclaimed equity fund, is suggesting that is also talking about QE4. These are the headlines. These are the headlines from Zero Hedge. Forget rate hikes. Bridgewater says QE4 is next. Warren's world is approaching end of debt supercycle. Now, this supercycle is what you're talking about. I think what Dr. Robert McHugh is talking about, Robert Prechter and other people that are looking at something much, much bigger than the sort of correction language that is being talked about by these talking heads on television that are, as you say, trying to sell stocks, huh?
Right. Well, you're looking at cycles that go back. You're looking at a trend that goes back to 1720.
Exactly.
So and if you look at that broadening top that I mentioned from 1995 forward, that's horrifying. I mean, that's been going on 20 years. It's been making that formation, and the implications are that, well, the implications just that the measuring implication of that figure alone is ridiculous. It shows a negative value for stocks, and of course that's not going to happen. They can go below zero. But and I'm not saying that stocks will be destroyed completely. I'm just saying the implication of all those indicators is that there's going to be a huge, huge correction. And I think what's happening is that the symbiotic relationship between banks and government, or you can call it the fascist relationship between banks and governments that was set up 1913 in this country, and has of course covered the globe, where you've got a government that finances its deficit spending through the bank, through a central bank, and the central bank coordinates the looting of the banking system. That is, the looting that the banking system does. I think that system is what's fallen apart. That entire system, and so somehow out of this, central banks will be discredited and probably repudiated. But that's jumping way ahead of where we are now.
Yeah, but you certainly, the handwriting does seem to be on the wall for that. No question about it. And 1913, of course, was a big step, and then 1971, which really freed the banks up to create this enormous amounts of credit amount, allowed the United States to create money that it used then to expand the empire, the Anglo-American empire, to the point now where I think, I don't know your thoughts about this, where we could be endangered with global conflict as a result of it.
Oh, certainly, because the United States has a history of going to war when economic times get tough.
Right.
And not only that, but the wars that we have seen on the scale that we have seen were impossible without central banks.
Right. Exactly. Well, my engineer is telling me we only have 3 minutes left. It's gone so fast. So I have to ask you about one of the things you've talked about, and you seem to give a great deal of importance to, is the ratio between the Dow and the gold price and the Dow and silver. Talk to us a little bit about that. What are you seeing in terms of the Dow to gold price and the Dow to silver price right now?
Dow Gold peaked in August of 1999, and Dow Silver peaked in June of 2001. That is the most reliable indicator I know of. And what it told us was get out of stocks and get into gold. Get out of stocks and get into silver. It went from 44 ounces of gold to buy the Dow down to about 5.5. It's rallied back up to about 16. It will go to 1-to-1 before this is over.
All right, so that's I know that's the Dow to gold, and we've seen that, and actually the last time that happened was about 1980 when we got to just about that ratio with gold at $850 and the Dow below 1,000. Are you suggesting that that's the kind of thing we can look forward to in the future? Of course, the last 5 years, Franklin, you'd have been a lot better off selling your gold and silver and buying stocks, but you're saying that party's over now.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what the Dow Gold is telling you. And the Dow Silver as well. And, when I say it's going to go back to 1 ounce to buy the entire Dow, that's the point it always goes back to. I mean, it's been back there in 3 cycles already. So there's a lot of historical evidence for that, and, it tends to return to that 1 ounce or 1 to 2 ounces to buy the whole Dow.
All right, we've got a minute left, so I've got to really cut this off. But I have to mention that one of the things you highlighted on your last missive was the premium that's being paid for silver, that is for junk silver. I guess it's 90% silver coin bags. I looked at your price of $19.05. That compared it was about 29% premium over the quoted price of silver. So I guess what you're suggesting is that it's time to buy silver. Silver looks like a great buying opportunity now, even more than gold, perhaps.
But if people who own 90% silver bags, I did a trade today where we took 4 90% silver bags, and the customer gained 20% in ounces.
Wow, that's really that's fascinating. Well, look, we have to go. My engineer's telling me we got 30 seconds, so unfortunately we've got to go. I want to have you back, of course, Franklin, to talk about many different topics in the future. Thanks so much for being with us, and look to do it again sometime in the near future.